Welcome to Read the Book First. Today, we are diving into Gregory Maguire's Wicked, the book that inspired it all, as in the musical, which we'll talk about next week. But Amanda's here.
Hi.
And apparently, she just told me that this is not the worst book I ever made her read. What was the worst book I ever made you read for the podcast?
Oh, Race to Witch Mountain.
Oh, I forgot about that. But that was a fun episode.
And that's not even and it's not that it's a bad book. It's just it's a children's book, and it's a 60s children's book.
Yeah. Go listen to that episode. I forgot about that episode.
I mean, to be fair.
It was a year ago.
It was a year ago, and it's not that memorable of a book.
No. Wicked. I was like, Amanda's going to read this book with me because she loves musicals, and obviously we're going to do the musical/movie musical episode next week, which I'm stoked, and I'm going to try my best not to talk about that. But also, personally,
I make no promises about not talking about the musical.
I know, but I'm going to try not to restrain it for a little teaser for next week. I also, just for context of Wicked, for the listeners, you guys heard me tell this, but just to catch Amanda on, because she has not heard the episode as it's not released yet. The Wizard of Oz, I was in an art camp production of it when I was in 5th grade. I love The Wizard of Oz. The book sucks. Don't read it. But do listen to the episode that was out last week. I loved The Wizard of Oz. I was a band kid. I was not a theater kid once I was past middle school. I would call myself a casual musical theater consumer, as in I was a Gleek and I was obsessed with Gleek, and so I know Wicked songs through my one or two friends who are obsessed with the Wicked musical, and so I knew Defying Gravity and Popular, the songs everyone knows, because they I think honestly transcend the musical itself. But I honestly know most of Wicked information based off the episodes of Glee. And
That's
still
hilarious.
to this day, I have yet to listen to the whole soundtrack.
Oh, Wicked?
Uh-huh.
Oh, yeah, you've told me this.
Yeah, I told you this. And so, I could have, after I discovered that, a month or so ago when I told you that, but I'm going to wait until probably this next week and watch it via the slime tutorials on YouTube.
Oh, you're going to watch it.
I'm going to watch it so we can talk about it next week and next week's episode. But all that to say is that going into the book Wicked, I knew very little besides that everyone's like, hey, it's not the musical, and also a lot of dark things happen. And when I wanted to read this when I was in 6th grade, because I was just in the Wizard of Oz musical, the lady who owned the bookstore in my small town was like, hey, Janessa's mom, you shouldn't let her read this because of the stuff is in it. And my mom's like, okay, don't read it. And so I didn't.
My sister, when she got obsessed with the musical 2007-ish, so she would have been 13 because I was 10, got the book. My mom read it with her because that's how they did stuff, is they read the books, then read them together so that my mom could have a finger on the pulse of what this book was. So that's how my sister read things like The Other Boleyn Girl, The Boleyn Inheritance, all of these books that she now in retrospect is like, when I told her about that we were reading this, she was like, I was way too young to be reading that.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, my mom and I also did that. I just would get books that she didn't want to read for various reasons because I was only at her house half the week. So I had a leg up on her book-wise. But yeah, did you read that when you when Emily was
No. Because first of all, I was 10 when we had access to this book and it was laying around. I read the prologue of this book 5 times. Being a snoopy little kid who liked to go through my sister's stuff, I would pick it up and read the first chapter and then put it down because I didn't really care. And also, it was boring.
Spoiler alert, this book's boring.
Well, and also, spoiler alert, 10-year-old Amanda barely liked to read fiction.
Yeah.
I only really got into fiction in
Amanda canon, it was the nonfiction era.
In Amanda canon, it was actually Magic Treehouse, ABC Mysteries, books that I was way too smart to be reading.
If they're enjoyable.
But yeah, exactly. I didn't like, I don't know. I just couldn't get into the fiction stuff. And also that was my sister's thing and I had to be different,
You're a Gemini.
Absolutely.
Anyways,
So, all this to say, I have a very fond memories of Wicked, but I feel like I should save those for when we talk about it next week.
with the musical, yeah. But you are reading this book now. You know the musical plot. Like, I barely do. And I'm keeping it that way. So that way, when I watch the slime tutorials next weekend, I will be like more into it. Based off what I know, I can put it together, the musical plot. And then reading this, I was like, oh, here's the 3 things that are in the musical. But
And it's again, we're not going to get into it because we're going
Yeah.
to talk about it next week.
yeah.
But the bigger thing is, I literally almost listened to the musical just to like start washing the taste of this book out of my brain.
You can do that on the way home.
Exactly. That's exactly what I thought to myself, because I was like, if I start listening to musical, I'm going to talk about the musical
Yeah.
too much.
Have you ever read Gregory Maguire's writing?
No.
I think that's the big difference here. I have read one other book by him. It was it's called Egg and Spoon. It came out about a decade ago. It is like a retelling of Russian like folk tales, like some Baba Yaga stuff in it. I loved it. It was also 100 pages less, and the action was shorter, and it wasn't spanning almost 2 decades like this book does. Which honestly,
They didn't stop the plot to talk about philosophy and the root of evil.
So, Wicked, the life and times of the Wicked Witch of the West, is the origin story of one of the best villains in American literature, I would argue. If you listen to last week's podcast, you heard Sam and I talk about how much we love the Wicked Witch of the West, both in the book and the movie, and like the Wicked Witch of the West is what makes both of those things. But reading this, I did like Elphaba. Like, that's the one good thing about this book was Elphaba as a character. I would say that's like one of the solid things throughout it.
I think it's really hard for me to talk about this book because, one, it's so entrenched in the musical for me that I can't. I'm literally biting my tongue every 5 seconds in my brain, just being like,
Book Elphaba is not musical Elphaba.
no, absolutely not. They do have a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
But they're not the same, and
Yeah.
they're not the same. I
Yeah.
really do like Book Elphaba.
Mhm.
I think she's kind of an interesting, if somewhat confusing character at times. My real qualms are going to come more at the end.
Yeah. So when I was watching before you came over, I was for the last couple hours was watching a bunch of interviews of Gregory Maguire from various book tours he's been on, because he's there's 3 other books in the Wicked series, and then in the last few years he's written more books about what he ends up imagining Elphaba's granddaughter, who also has green skin. Spoiler.
I actually looked up the next book just because I was curious. Like,
Yeah.
where would you go from there?
Yeah.
The answer is boring.
And her adventure to a different world that he makes up. But anyway, so like there's a lot in the series, but when he wrote this, he did not go into it being like, what was the backstory of the Wicked Witch of the West? What he wanted to do is, he's in 1992, he was like, hey, I want to write a book about evil and what makes someone evil, and is evil like what does it mean to be wicked? What does it mean to be evil? And so that's when as he was going through this process, he describes in this interview, which I'll try to find and put the link in the show notes. But he said, I used my he has a PhD in American children literature.
Oh, okay.
Yes. And so he was like, hey.
He writes like somebody who's got a PhD.
Absolutely. As someone who's an English major, I was like, yes, this guy is definitely an English major, and he has a PhD. Anyways, so he went back to the old like adage, write what you know. And he thought, well, I want to write a book about evil and the philosophy and like the ideas of that, just to discuss that. What are the 2 things I know a lot about? And he said he knows a lot about church choir music because he was a choir director for years, and he knows a lot about American literature and fantasy, American children's fantasy. And so he's like, I love The Wizard of Oz. Who doesn't? And so he was like, okay, well, I'm gonna use this backstory, and then here we go, and like dove into it. So that's like, which I thought was interesting. It makes sense. That's what he wanted going after reading this book. But you would think someone who wrote a huge series all in the Wizard of Oz and inspired by the Wizard of Oz, that he was like setting out, I'm going to write my own revisionist history of the Wizard of Oz. But instead, I thought that was an interesting way of how he entered this
novel.
Yeah. But it makes a lot of sense after finishing it.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
I think, like, I know we got to talk about chronology, but I don't know how well this book does at exploring the root of evil for me.
I think because it was written in 1995, right, which is 30 years ago at this point, I think it does a good job. I think just since then we've had better stories of villain origin stories, right?
Yeah.
So I think in that way, also because, like, I think the setting of being Oz, I think also hinders the amount of evil he does. Not that, like, there's this book, like, it is dark. Like, I guess trigger warning before we get into it, like, there's a lot of dark shit that happens in this book. Like, look up the content warnings for all the bullshit that goes on.
Sexual assault,
like,
genocide.
Yep.
Honestly, those are the two big ones. Terrorism, I guess.
Just terrorism in general. Just
murdering an old lady in a bed.
Barely. Like tyrannical, like, oppression, political violence, like, so, like, all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I almost feel like he could have gone more evil.
Oh, 100%.
Right.
And especially, like, I think,
not that I want her to be more evil. I'm happy with the amount of, like, nuance she has as a character, but I think they could have put more evil.
See, I kind of disagree. I feel like they really either needed to I feel like, for me personally, he kind of needed to either double down on, yes, Elphaba has gone through this, like, moral slippage through time, and with her being, like, actually evil and a little bit more, like, growing over time, because the way it reads to me at this exact moment in time is we get 20 pages from the end, she finds things out, and now suddenly she's paranoid and evil and never sleeps and willing to harm a, like, 12-year-old.
She's paranoid the whole book, though.
She is paranoid.
And, like, they talk any character that she talks to for more than
you
a second.
see conspiracies around every corner, and
which, like, I will say that's one critique I had, is, like, everyone was pointing at her being like, you're paranoid, bitch. And like, as we read through her point of view, we see her paranoid for chunks of it, but not as paranoid as everyone's pointing her out to be. And that could be to show how the opposite they are, that they're just, like, going with the flow. You know what I mean? So, like,
I guess that's the disconnect.
Murky,
that's the disconnect for me, because everyone's saying she's paranoid, but, like, a lot of times, low-key, she's right.
Yeah.
She's right about things being paranoid.
Like, he's right in make sure that we are on Elphaba's side, right? Like, that is the goal of this book, is to be on her side.
Yeah.
So I understand that we don't see all the paranoia. Like, I don't know. I understand, but also for an author who does so much description, we don't get descriptions on things I actually give a shit about.
Oh my God, right? Right?
So
I have a very specific note about it later, and it's so frustrating because, like, and we're not going to get in there because eventually we are going to summarize the book, I promise. Yeah. But, like, so I either needed him to go full on in on it and have her actually, like, have this moral, like, event horizon where she becomes, like, a really bad person. Yeah. Instead of, like, okay, you killed an old lady. Yeah. And you're threatening to kill a little girl.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you seen the Cruella?
No.
Okay, one, you should, because honestly, it is a really good movie, and the soundtrack slaps. It's really good. But that Cruella movie, I think, is one of the best depictions of a character you are loving, and you see them dive fully into the evil version of what they end up being.
So either they needed to dive into fully, like, you know, she's a bad person, or they really kind of needed to just like let it be this misunderstood person.
Yeah.
Because I feel like right now they're going for this moral ambiguity, which is good.
Yeah.
Moral ambiguity is good.
Yeah.
But right now it just feels kind of wishy-washy.
Mm-hmm.
And the character change, especially towards the end, happens so fast that I'm just kind of like, I get whiplash.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. We can kind of dive in part by part. Again, this book is thick and a lot happens.
400 pages.
It is so long, but our reward is going to be seeing the Wicked musical. Anyways,
Movie musical.
I'm so excited. So it starts with a prologue, and it's the Wicked Witch of the West observing Dorothy and her 4 companions as they make their way along the Yellow Brick Road, and the Lion, the Tin Man are just like gossiping about horrific things about the Wicked Witch of the West, including like saying that she like is actually a man, like all this.
She never knew a mother's love.
Like all this like just horrific stuff. And Dorothy is immediately like, I don't know, guys, that doesn't seem right. What do you mean? Like she's like super sympathetic about everything. She's like, guys, let's be nice, because Dorothy is a child.
And she's also like, she must be so sad her sister is dead. And I'm like, damn, girl, too pure for this world.
Yeah. And the witch sees the shoes, but she just doesn't interfere because a storm, like a wind, comes through. And that's like essentially the end of the prologue. But I like that they started with that, so we knew where we were going, right? Because when you have a villain origin story, you're like, do we meet them as a young adult? Do we meet them as a child? Like, what is the end goal? You know, we need time constraints. And so we go from the prologue, we know that we're going to get to the version of the Wicked Witch that we know in some way, right? Someone who's chasing down Dorothy.
For shoes.
For shoes, yes. Because girly things.
Honestly.
Just kidding. But then we start with part 1, which takes place in the Munchkin land. And it is called The Root of Evil. And it is the birth story. It starts with the birth story of Elphaba.
And it's basically Elphaba's mom and dad, Milena and Frex.
Yeah, Frexbar, or Frex is how he's called.
Yeah. So they like, Milena's like moping about how pregnant she is and how she's tired of being pregnant. And Frex is like, there's a great evil in the air. And he's talking about this like giant dragon clock.
The time clock, yeah.
Yeah. And then Milena's like, no, don't say that. Our son is coming. And I'm like, bad news, buddy.
Yeah, it's this time clock. So Frex is what we would call like a very Puritan version of the religion here in Oz. He worships the unnamed god. There's a lot of religion in this book, which makes sense with what Maguire, like, he used to be really involved in the church, specifically I believe the Lutheran church. I might be mistaken, but also since I read just recently The Wizard of Oz, Frank L. Baum loved lore, but he did not do my critique from last episode, he did not do a good job of lore dropping in a good way. It was always confusing and random, it seemed. And so
he's keeping with the tradition.
Exactly. So it's like that bit of like the lore dropping in this book mimics what Frank L. Baum does similarly. And there are ties to other things. So like as we go, I'll point out things that are directly from
some of them
Wizard of
I
Oz
do
book.
know, like the Ozma thing.
Yes.
Like the name of the ruler of Oz is Ozma, and in later books she's like a little child.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Yeah. So, but in part 1, we get a lot of religious bullshit, but that's because Frex is a like traveling missionary essentially.
Yeah.
For this puritanical-esque unnamed god.
Yeah.
And the dragon and the time clock are a rival religion of like, with like more an ancient one that has like, they have fairies and idols, and this dwarf who is operating this time clock is essentially going town to town and being like, here's this drama I'm going to point out, and then the people involved in that drama either get run away or get like stoned to death. Like, it causes terrible drama in each one. And so Frex is very worried about this, which is understandable, except for that his wife's about to give birth.
Yeah.
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 And so he's out doing missionary stuff, trying to like spread the word of the unnamed God / yell about how the time clock is going to destroy humanity or whatever.
So I wasn't tracking a lot of this because I just really did not care.
Yeah.
So there's the two religions that you just said.
Yes.
Dragon clock and the unnamed God. Is Luriel or whatever
Lurline is the dragon clock.
is
one.
part
It's
of the dragon clock.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I thought there was 3.
there is a third, but it's like confusing. There's confusing, but like the main 2 ones are the Lurline one.
Lurline.
Yeah, whatever that is, and the unnamed God. The unnamed God has recently become the newest one. And it's like essentially it's like very similar to when Christianity was like, hey, paganism things, we're going to take you. Oh, that holiday, Yule, now Christmas. Like they're essentially doing that in Oz.
Yeah.
And he's like directly
and
like
things that
referencing those.
And things that we learn about the wizard make a lot of sense as we continue with that.
Yes. Frex goes to like deal with this drama. Melena's going into birth. There's some like ladies who are just being dicks to her. They don't really like her because she's also comes from a rich family, but escaped that rich family.
She's the daughter of the Great Eminence, which is some kind of like position.
Yeah, it's like a governor, essentially, of the Munchkin land.
But it's inherited.
Yes, but by women.
By women.
Which we don't find out at this point. But he also... So we see that Frex wants a son because his dad was a minister and his dad before him was a minister, and it's all... So Melina wants, we think at this point, a son for that. We find out later that it was for other reasons. But she's having a hard time in birth because childbirth is horrific.
Bad. But then also, I'm going to interrupt you and backtrack a second. Frex goes to protest the clock, and what gets portrayed is basically a scene of him getting cheated on with Melena because somebody comes in and like...
Yeah, the play. So the time clock, I picked it's described as a big dragon on top. It's like a bunch of little puppets in there, and they share the drama and stuff. And he sees his wife getting essentially raped by a random stranger, and we don't know if that's true or not from his perspective because we don't hear Melena's point of view from that situation. We're just assuming that Elphaba is a child of this assault. Right. So these dickhead ladies who are helping Melena through birth end up dragging her to go find help somewhere, and they end up in a graveyard.
They end up dragging her because
she's like unconscious because
yes, but Frex, like, because the dragon clock depicted him is getting run out of town / stoned, so they all surround her house, and the ladies like
take her out to save
her out, and doesn't she like give birth in the dragon clock?
Yeah, they end up giving birth. The dragon clock is parked in the graveyard, and she gives birth in the dragon clock, and then the baby that comes out is what will be Elphaba. Who is green and has pointy features and has like literal shark teeth, and is just kind of a horrific baby.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's also every once in a while, Gregory Maguire does have some really interesting description because his description of Elphaba being born is like, there was no wail, no bark of newborn outrage. The baby was shirking its obligations. Yeah, like that's a cool, fun line.
Yeah, no, like he has great moments of writing. It's just I think I would like his writing in short story form. I don't think I would like his writing in novel form.
I mean, honestly, that's what Wicked sort of feels like as a book, is it feels like every chapter is a short story.
Yeah. And he writes a lot of short stories.
Yeah, and it's not well connected.
Yeah, I agree. But anyways, Elphaba is born. They name her Elphaba.
She bites off a lady's finger.
It's
pretty badass.
And they're like trying to figure out things. Melena calls on her nanny who raised her to come help with them
because she's like super depressed at this moment in time.
Yeah, and I love the character Nanny.
I know, right?
Nanny
she's the only one that's immediately like, everyone else is such a bitch about this baby.
Everyone's being a bitch. Yeah, the baby's ugly, but it's a baby. I'm gonna take care of it.
She's the first one that's like, guys, it's a baby. It's not an it.
Yeah. Melena admits to Nanny that when Frex was off preaching, that she did talk to people as they come through, aka she had a lot of affairs, and she ends up taking a green elixir from a salesman and blacked out. So we're assuming that this is what happened how she got pregnant with Elphaba. But it's like it's uncertain at this point. We don't know.
Yeah.
But as Elphaba is like growing up, there ends up being a quadling glassblower. I guess we can talk. Okay, let's pause. Oz as a world is massive. Also, I have a big thing. So in the Wizard of Oz, I'm going to show you this map. In the original Wizard of Oz, we have in the center of the Emerald City, quadriling to the south. To the north is Gillikin. That is the same as in Wicked.
Yes.
But look in the Wizard of Oz, and here on the east
side
is Winky, and on the west is Munchkin Land. Which means in the book, when they call the Wicked Witch of the East, who has enslaved the Munchkinlanders, why is she over here on Wicked Witch of the West territory? We don't understand that. Like, Baum does not describe that well. Because he's like, they're sisters, so maybe they were like in coalition together. We don't know, because Frank L. Baum didn't tell us. But isn't that's so confusing?
Wild.
Right? But then we get to Wicked, and we have in the center, Emerald City, north, Gillikin, south, Quadling. In the east, we have Munchkin Land, and in the west, we have the Vinkus, which is how it should be.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I honestly don't know if that's a misprint of the map in my Wizard of Oz book from the library, or if the world just kind of ignored Baum's accident and confusion of that, and then here we have Maguire fixing it.
Or maybe he also can't tell his left from right, because I can't.
Do you want to know a fun little fact about this map while we're looking at it?
Yeah.
Look in the very top left corner. Does yours say to fly in?
Yes.
So when Maguire was growing up in Albany, he and his friends made up a little world. They thought they found a cute, like, Narnia-esque world in some alleyways that called Fly-In. Or Fly-In. And so he added it to the map. And that's sweet.
Cute.
Yeah. Anyways, back to the horrific.
We also learned that there's like a drought that's going on.
Yes.
And this guy named Turtleheart, who's a quadling, comes in and is like, "Hey, I left Quadling country because they're about to dig into a whole bunch.
Rubies.
They're getting rubies, and bad stuff's gonna happen."
Yeah.
And Frex is like, "Awesome! I'm gonna go there."
Mm-hmm. Missionaries. Yeah, so there's a lot of political turmoil within, and each part of the book, the political turmoil is like mentioned and described a bit, but it doesn't go fully into it. Mm-hmm. But right now, the wizard has recently had a coup that's taken over the Ozma dynasty. Ozma, who is a young child, is rumored to have been frozen. And will one day, everyone hopes that she will return.
And then the Ozma regent was like mysteriously ill.
Yes.
And everyone's like, "Oh, okay, so the wizard just killed him."
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's like, he's like very slowly consolidating power and taking over Emerald City.
Yeah.
And then there's all these other things going on in terms of like, there's a drought going on in Munchkin Land.
And then that's like the farmland. So that's like really affecting them because that's their main source of
and then
money.
They're building this like they're building the yellow brick road. And there's some people that are blaming that for the drought. There's like some arguments breaking out among the Vinky.
The Vinkies?
Yes.
The Vinkus?
The Vinkus, yes.
Yeah. So the Quadlings are like described, it's like a marshy land we hear, and they're like frog-like people. And then the Vinkus people are like very, like, there's different clans, and it's interesting how, like, they kind of talk about it later on, but just for like some background. But anyways, we have Turtleheart, who was a quadling, who's like, "Hey, can I hang out with you guys?" And Melina is like, kind of like in love immediately.
Absolutely.
He's a glass blower, which is pretty cool. He does some glass blowing, but he ends up living with them for
quite some time,
for a couple years. He gives baby Elphaba, a mirror, and a little like looking glass, and which
comes up a little bit later.
Way later.
I got a question.
Yes.
It was at this point that I had to sit down and make a note. Are the sex scenes feeling unnecessary because they're actually unnecessary, or is it just because...
I would say they are important for the plot. And also, they're very minimal.
Yeah, there's not that. There was a lot at the very beginning, and then they like...
Yeah,
and then in the City of Emeralds. And then they didn't have another one. And I was like, cool, thanks.
Yeah. But, yeah, there are a few sex scenes. But, I mean, I think it's necessary for the information that comes later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
However, he does use the phrase dragon sneaking to describe sex, and I think that might be my least favorite thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, it's not great. Yeah. As Elphaba is growing up, she's very like aggressive as a toddler, and Nanny's like, we need to get this child to go talk to kids and be socialized. And Melina's like, they're gonna bully her. She's green.
Yeah.
She's green. Like, they're gonna bully her. And Nanny's like, yeah, the world's gonna bully her. Let her learn how to deal with it now. Which honestly,
yeah. Props to Nanny.
Nanny comes in clutch.
Elphaba being introduced to other children was also very relatable, and it was at this point that I was like, is Elphaba autistic coded? Okay, just checking. And her first word is finally said, because at this point she's 3 years old and hasn't talked.
Mm-hmm.
And her first word is horrors.
Yep.
Horrors.
Yep.
And that's all she says.
Yeah. But that kind of wraps up part 1. And we have a big time jump. Lots of time jumps in this book.
This is where they really talk about the rubies in blood and how like there are rubies in the water, and that's going to mean that quadling blood runs through the water as well.
Part 2, Gillikin, we have a big time jump, and we have a POV switch. We now have the POV of Galinda.
You know, this is also a thing that I don't like about the book is like, I feel like, and I mean, yeah, it's in like different chapters. They switch point of views so often to like different things, and there's not always a lot of rhyme and reason to it.
It's not very clear either.
Yeah,
I'd be fine with it if instead of chapter titles and then one like sub chapters within it numbered, if it was like Game of Thrones style where whoever was talking or POV was the title chapter.
Yeah, like
you can still have parts named different things to kind of chunk out the different time jumps. But I think that would have helped.
Yeah.
But we have Galinda, who is on her way to Shiz University.
And then they say this like dumb sexist thing about like girls aren't allowed to study certain things at Shiz. And I'm like, why? Why are we putting sexism into the book?
Because they're trying to fight sexism in this book. Well, he's trying to. Whether or not he's successful, But like...
Is that why?
Yes.
It doesn't do a good job.
No, it doesn't. No. But I mean... Yeah, well, I'll get into that a little bit later. But Galinda is on the train to Shiz, and we meet our first capital animal. So in this world, of Oz, there are animals like we have in our world, and then there's animals with capital letters at the beginning that can talk, like the Cowardly Lion in the movie. So she meets a goat professor, who we find out is Dr. Dillamond, on the train, and Galinda immediately is like, trying to be cordial, but also is like, I don't want to be associated with animals, because at this point Oz is like, the Wizard of Oz is like trying to discriminate and like change laws about animals and their rights.
So they talk about like restrictions on travel and how
they can't have certain jobs anymore.
Yeah, and they can't attend certain schools. And so Dillamond is sitting there being like, yeah, if I had kids that couldn't come here, it's messed up. I'm gonna do something about it.
And Galinda in her head is like, that sucks, but also I've been born and trained not to like politically agree with that. And so she's having like this kind of like she's having that like fresh kid to college, out of her bubble, and like, oh, the world isn't exactly what it seems, but I also want to find out what the world is, what is wrong with the world, but I'm also being shocked by it.
And a good piece of writing, Maguire basically says about Galinda.
Yes, Galinda.
He basically says she had been raised to think that being pretty was the same thing as being excellent.
Yes. And that really summarizes book version of Galinda.
Correct.
There's also this whole part we find here that she has someone to come with her, an Alma clutch. These are like guardian nanny type
pretty much
things. But her her Alma clutch stepped on a nail at a train station and had to go get that fixed. So Galinda went without her so she wouldn't be late. So they get to Shiz, and this is a huge deal because all the rich girls have Almas, and the Almas are in charge of like making political like allegiances with girls to be roommates. And because Alma Clutch is not there due to this injury, Galinda almost gets stuck in the dorm. But then she talks to...
Shock, horror.
Yes. We have the head of the girls' dorm, Madame... Morrible. Madame Morrible is as the name sounds. And Galinda is able to convince Madame Morrible to wait until her Alma Clutch does come in and be like, hey, I have an Alma. My family comes from money. I'm not going to do this and set off my life this way, right? And so Madame Morrible is like, okay, but the only girl that's left, you get this weird green girl here. And she gets, so that's how Galinda and Elphaba end up rooming together.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very, this part from Galinda's point of view is very like good versus evil because she's like pink and trying to be popular and trying to be high society. And then we have this person from the Quadlings who's wearing all like just like very like drab clothing and is green and quiet and reading a book.
Mm-hmm.
How dare she?
I know, right? Well, and it's also kind of, and again, I'm not going to talk about the musical, but I am going to say it is very interesting, this version of Galinda, just because, like, she's not the alpha bitch. Mm-mm. She's the side bitch.
Yes.
That just is hanging on trying to be as popular.
Yeah.
Side note. Mm-hmm. When she says that she's Galinda of the Uplands,
yes,
is the Uplands, like, a big deal, or is it just, like, a mini deal?
She's trying to get as much power from her family lineage as possible to leverage when she goes off to Shiz. She's just trying to like.
So it's like a power play.
She's like, I have power. I'm from the Uplands. I have this family. Like, we have money and power. I promise, guys. It's like that kind of vibe.
Oh, okay. But everyone else
is like, I guess you're powerful. You have pretty clothes.
But, like, everybody else's family that is the popular girls, they're, like, from Emerald City?
I don't know. We don't know.
Okay.
We just know that they're the popular rich girls that are bitches.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also, she has this line about, Elphaba's hair is so entrancing. And I'm like, okay, girly.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I know what you are.
And they were roommates. We also meet Bach, who is a little, well, he's not little. He's a munchkin. He's a munchkin lander. He's not a munchkin. Munchkin lander. He's pretty tall for munchkin lander.
But he's still shorter than Glinda.
Galinda. But he's there, and we find out that Bach was one of the kids that was forced to hang out with Elphaba when Elphaba was learning how to be a kid. Mm-hmm. And Bach is immediately obsessed with Galinda and wants like to court her and all this, and he does take no eventually, and it's like fine being in the quote friend zoned, but like there's a whole
section where he's like spying on their dorms and like hanging outside their windows, and it's like that's real weird.
And there's a lot of Madame Morrible, there's like a poetry night where she talks shit about animals, and it's really rude, and it really upsets Elphaba, because Elphaba immediately is like fully into animal rights activism.
Well, and there's also this kind of interesting dynamic, and this part was personally very triggering for me. Because Galinda and Elphaba start like having these kind of interesting conversations where Elphaba's like, yeah, Galinda sometimes like really can get into like the meat of things and has interesting thoughts. She just pretends that she doesn't. And like she goes to bed thinking that they had a great conversation. And then Galinda goes and tells all the popular rich friends about all the shitty things. And like, oh my God, she talked to me all night and it was so annoying. Let me just continue to tell you all the weird things she says.
Yeah,
it sucked.
Do you think that which version of Galinda do you think is actually true? Do you think she really thinks everything Elphaba and her are talking about are stupid? Or do you think Galinda actually believes that? Or do you think she's just putting on a face? I think
she's not really either of them.
I think she's putting on a face.
I mean, that's not really the person that she is. It's an act that she is putting on.
Yeah.
But it's also, she's not really, as she sees later, she's not somebody who's like that deeply invested into like the world of making
she's invested in
better.
herself.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Madame Morrible like urges Galinda to do sorcery. So like so far there hasn't been much magic in this world, but here we're like a sorcery is like a whole like major you can do. So she's depending on maybe doing that. We also find out that Elphaba has a sister who will be joining soon,
and that her mom's dead.
And that her mom's dead. Yeah, we find out for the first time. Then we have a POV from Bach, and Bach's dealing with boys and boy things. And this is where he's like spying on them, and that he's in love with Galinda, and gets Elphaba, who he calls Elfie, to essentially set up a situation where Galinda and him can talk, which is where Galinda's like, "Hey, you're cool as a friend," and the Bach's like, "Heard, will be a friend, I promise you."
And the more interesting thing too is this is where Elphaba's really like delving into like Dr. Dillamond's research with him, because she like basically summer hits and she and Bach are here for the summer because they're poor.
Yep.
Okay. And everyone else like leaves.
Gets to go to summer holidays.
And goes on vacation. So Elphaba is like working with Dr. Dillamond.
Who is again a goat who is trying to study, they call it life sciences, but what they really mean is what makes a person, more philosophy. And they're trying to like essentially prove that animals with a capital A are different than animals with a lowercase a.
Yeah. See, and I think that what I got out of it is that they were trying to prove that animals with a capital A were actually like made of the same stuff as humans.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what they were trying to prove. And as he was like trying to get into that research, like they run into this roadblock where like the books that they need are in the other library that the girls aren't allowed to go to. And obviously Dr. Dillamond can't go in and get the book.
Yeah. Because of he's getting scrutinized right now because he is one of the last capital A animals at Shiz that has a job that is not like manual labor. So he's like
he's trying to
deal
fly
with that.
under the radar.
Yeah.
So Bach agrees to go get the book for them. And then Elphaba gets this letter from Galinda being like, "Elfie, I need you. I need to see you. I'm so excited to see you." And it's a prank.
Yes. And that was awful.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But I also like that when they get there, Elphaba's like, "Y'all pranked me. Bitch, y'all have to deal with me being here." Which I was like, that's a power move. Like turn it on them. Like, you don't want to hang out with me? Guess what? I'm gonna be here.
You invited me, and now I'm here, and you're not getting
also
rid of
these
me.
boys and this TikTok monster. So there is Madame Morrible has this what's called a TikTok creature. I forget the name of the guy, but something like that. TikToks are creatures that are in the original Oz books. It's a C-3PO steampunk TikTok creature that before steampunk was a thing. So it was interesting seeing this. I was like, oh, so that is from the Oz books, and this is from the Oz books. So like there is a lot of like small little details directly from the Oz books. Summer ends, they get back to school. Oh, a really important thing is during their research, Bach and Elfie find this big like ancient picture of a Cumbric witch, which are like ancient witches in this, again, random lore that is kind of from Oz books, but also just
never really
Maguire's.
Explained.
Yeah, but it has a woman who is either feeding an animal from her breast or is suffocating the animal, like strangling it. And this picture kind of combines the two different theological ideas of these main two religions of how animals with a capital A were created.
Yeah.
And so it plays into a thing later.
Yeah, it was wild. Is this where Dr. Dillamond dies?
Yes.
So Dr. Dillamond
is
murdered, or as Madame Morrible continues to insist, he accidentally slit his own throat on his magnifying glass after he broke it.
Yeah. And Amma Clutch sees the Madame Morrible's TikTok monster run into the room, and she goes down there to find it, and she kind of loses her mind after that. And
then Madame Morrible's like, "Oh, Galinda, you're gonna have to move into the dorms," and she's like, No. What if Elphaba's sister comes a year early with her nanny? And then she does.
And that's what happens. And this is where we meet Nessa Rose, which I did not know this character's name was Nessa Rose, because this is one of the things from the musical did not, any idea of. So, because my name is Janessa, and I have friends from high school that called me, like from my basketball team, that called me Nessa, because there was 2 Janessas, so we couldn't. I know.
It's just the odds of having someone be named Janessa.
But theirs is J.A. Mine was J.E. But because they were a year older than me, like, they got to keep the name Janessa. And so I wasn't called Nessa. I was called Ness. But
like the Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah. So anyway, so seeing Nessa Rose, I was like, nice.
So also Nessa Rose, this is where we also find out. Actually, I think I lied earlier. This is where we find out for sure that their mom is dead. And they have a brother.
Yeah.
They have a brother.
They have a brother named Shell.
Yeah.
Who is young and traveling around with their dad. But Nessa Rose, also important. Nessa Rose was born with no arms.
Yep.
But she's not green.
And she can't walk. And she's an ambulatory wheelchair user to a certain extent.
Does she use a chair in the books? I don't think so. I thought she did. That's why Nanny was with her all the time to help her walk. That's what I thought. I think you're getting this combined with the musical.
Probably. Yeah.
It's all right. But Nessa Rose joins them, and because Nanny is Nessa Rose's chaperone and helps her and aid, essentially, Nessa Rose joins them in their room, and Nanny is able to be their guardian so that they don't have to go to the dorms. And
then the second year of school is really where Glinda, this is where she starts going by Glinda. Yeah, so she changes her name to Glinda. Is it because of Dr. Dillamon too in the book?
Yes. It's because of Dr. Yeah, because on the train, he mispronounces her name and says Glinda, and she's like, no, it's Galinda, like how you're supposed to pronounce it.
And so in honor of Dr. Dillamond, she changes it to Glinda.
Yeah. Glinda also talks about how she is starting to feel guilt about
Amma Clutch
losing her mind, because she at one point was like, when she was trying to convince Madame Morrible that Amma Clutch was get there, that she was like, Amma Clutch loses her mind sometimes, and she thinks that this is because of her sorcery powers, which it could be, but also I think it's just Amma Clutch lost her mind after seeing a murder. Fair enough.
Oh, I kind of assumed that Madame Morrible made her lose her mind.
Also, maybe that.
That's kind of what I thought, because Madame Morrible's the only person that knew about Amma Clutch having quote unquote episodes.
Yeah.
So when Glinda saw it happen, she was like, "Oh my God, Madame Morrible made this thing happen because she knew that it was a thing that I had said happened."
Yeah. Yeah.
But this is where Glinda, Bach, Elphaba, and 3 other boys whose names I don't really care about.
Yeah.
Tibbet is one of them.
Crope,
and then the Avriac.
Yeah.
Avriac.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was going with the obvious metaphor there.
Yeah.
And then there's this other guy named Fiero who they describe as having shit-colored skin, which is a choice.
Well, so they're all buds. Fiero's not there yet, but they're all buds. And then at the in class with the new professor who took over for Dr. Delamont's spot, Fiero comes in. He also is described having blue tribal patterns. It is a choice that Maguire made. But he comes into class and he gets attacked by antlers. And it's essentially laughed at that same class. The same doctor professor guy brings in a lion cub for a lesson on animals versus animals. And
Elphaba gets incensed because she's like, where is this lion cub's mother? What happened to her? Why are you putting him in a cage? And all of this stuff. And
valid questions.
The professor's like, well, if you put an animal with a capital A in a cage, they will never learn how to speak.
Yeah.
And she's like, that's not okay.
Yeah. And so the cub is able to escape with the help of 2 girls that we don't know. And it's a whole thing. Their dad, Freck, sends Nessa a pair of fancy slippers that are supposed to help her walk or just feel... She's the favorite. Freck loves Nessa Rose. We find out later why. But
they're just supposed to be pretty, I think, too.
She's pretty in comparison.
No.
to
The
Elphaba.
shoes are just pretty.
Oh, no, they're very pretty. Yeah, they're silver, right? And these are the silver shoes because in the original Wizard of Oz books, the slippers are silver.
Not ruby.
Yeah, which if you listen to last week's episode, we talked about. And they're still silver here, which I like. And then we find out, oh yeah, there's fancy slippers. There's a scene where Elphaba ends up singing with her friends at the bar, and apparently she's an amazing singer.
Yeah.
Which we find out later, her dad used part of her singing voice with his like missionary missions. Then we have Alma Clutch, who has lost her mind, is now dying. And Glinda performs a spell of sorts and asks Alma Clutch who killed Dr. Delmont, and she says it was Gromatic. That's the name, Gromatic. And then she dies. Dun, 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 dun.
And then Madame Morrible like shows up at the funeral. It's a very cheap funeral.
Yep.
And at the very cheap funeral, she like pulls
the three girls,
Elphaba, Glinda, and Nessa Rose aside, and is like, "You guys could be really great someday. Only one of you has chosen sorcery, but like all of you could be wonderful sorceresses for the higher powers that are in Oz and all this shit." And like Glinda like is like entranced by it. Nessa Rose, I didn't really get a vibe. She pretend faints, and then Elphaba's like, no, that's not a thing.
But specifically, Madame Morrible is like, Nessa Rose, you grew up in the Quadlings, you'll go there. Glinda, you're from the north, you're going to go to the north, and Elphaba, you're going to go to Munchkin Land.
Because eventually you're going to be the Grand Eminence of, like, the Throp line.
Yeah, the Throps. And then she also kind of, like, spells them, supposedly, that they can't speak of this conversation to each other. And it freaks out Elphaba. Like, freaks her out.
Yep. And then they, like, go to the city together, and they eat in the cafe and have a little grand old time.
While they are kind of processing this loss, the rest of their friends end up going to the Philosophy Club, which is like a cabaret, like a kind of like pre-World War II kind of cabaret where it's scandal, 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 scandal. But also there at the front door is this weird old, quote, crone and a dwarf, and they're like saying creepy ass shit, and they go in, and poor Tibbet is chosen to partake in a like orgy on stage that involves a tiger.
Yeah, I kind of blocked out that part.
I mean, it's 2 paragraphs, but it's awful. But it does play later in.
Yeah.
But it's just
I think that
gross.
it also has this line. This was the part, and I don't remember if it's in the club scene, but they had a line of like the hussy of a baboon, and I was just sitting there like, I'm reading a book that has that line, like straight up, like written out.
Yeah, but weird lines, not like explicit weird lines, but weird lines similar to that show up in the Wizard of Oz book. So like when Maguire chooses these weird phrases that are explicit, if you were to take away the explicit part, those phrases could be from the Wizard of Oz. So like it is weirdly true. This book is weirdly true to the source material, but like a weird philosophy film bro major explicit version of it. Yeah.
I'm just saying that sometimes this book felt like we're in the Wizard of Oz, but we made it darker and edgier by putting sex in it.
Elphaba convinces Glinda to travel to the Emerald City to go and talk to the wizard because she's mad about Madame Morrible and thinks
the wizard
will help, which is it's a summer child thought. Like
it's a very like just turned 18 political activist kind of like brain thing where you're like, if the people in power really understood how their actions impacted others, they would care.
Yep. And like during this part, I was reading this was after November 5th, and I was like, this is a wild book to read this week. But anyways, they are able to somehow get like 4 minutes with the wizard. They talk their ways into it. It's like unheard of that the wizard even sees anyone. And Elphaba angrily talks about Dr. Dilmond and how he was murdered. And then the wizard, who's like a skeleton dancing.
He's like, yeah, but he was like causing trouble.
Yeah. He's like, what am I, like, I don't care. What? Yeah. And it like breaks Elphaba that Which makes sense. Like, that makes sense. If she came up, like, her whole goal is, like, to make the world better, and she's fighting for the rights of capital A animals. Like, she's, like, going through this route, and then the literal head of everything in this world is like, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah. Yep.
And then it breaks her. And so she decides not to return to Shiz.
Yeah, so she sends Glinda off in the carriage with a kiss.
Yeah.
Like, literally a kiss. Yeah. And it is so wild.
Yeah.
And at this point, I was like, okay, we are at page 188.
Uh-huh.
We are at page 188, my friends.
We're barely halfway.
We're not even halfway. All of the most interesting, intriguing stuff kind of has already happened.
I had the exact same thought. So, part 3, City of Emeralds.
So this part opens up with Fiyero, like, in the City of Emeralds.
5 years later.
Looking at the statue of Saint Galinda. And as he's looking up at this statue, he's thinking about his current life and how he's married to someone that he's known since he was 12 / may have been a child when he was 17.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, just so we're clear.
Yeah.
And his 3 kids that he never sees.
But he also mentions that they didn't have relations until she was an adult.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, he was just forced to marry her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that I got out of it, but I like hadn't quite put together a lot of it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it's years later, and he has 3 kids. He's like a prince, and he is trying to build political connections in Emerald City. When, shock and awe, he sees Elphaba one day, and he follows her, and then they have sex.
Well, then they chat for a while and catch up. Then they have sex for the first time. And just to be clear, the Fiyero and Elphaba sex scenes are more of just like, we love each other, and then we were naked and sex happened.
Yeah,
like, it's like 3 sentences. It's not like
it's not like overly detailed and weirdly descriptive, and they never use the phrase dragon snake again, thank God. But here's the thing, right? And this is where the most interesting stuff of this book has already happened, because Elphaba's sitting there like, I can't involve you in my work. It's too dangerous, and I can't. That's why I had to leave Shiz and all this stuff. And I'm like, ma'am,
yeah.
You did you say a sentence to Fiyero while you were at school? And it turns out, like, 3 pages later, they're both reflecting on. They're like, nope. And I'm like, Maguire, my dude, you can't just skip things and then pretend that stuff happened.
But you can. He did.
I mean, I guess in the most theoretical thing.
I felt like it was less of like, we were besties, and like, literally, like, him, Fiyero, and Elphaba were besties in college, and now they're reconnecting. It was more like they had the same friend group, and their friend group was tight in the way that friend groups are, where like certain people are closer than others because you can't be the same amount close with everyone. Yeah. Right? I think, and then they're just reconnecting now because they both had the hots for each other. This never acted on it. That's what I got from it. Which is like a very like normal thing that happens.
Yeah, and that's again why you're the podcast host and I'm just the guest, because I was like, this is so weird and out of left field because I don't understand romantic tension.
It is no. There is no romantic tension on screen or on page. To be clear, he still skips all of that stuff, but it's alluded to.
Yeah.
Like, it's like there's 2 lines and the reader just has to be like, I guess.
Yeah.
But I will say one thing I like about the Elphaba and Fiyero stuff, and throughout this book, Elphaba is written the way men write about men, and Fiyero is written about the way that men write about women. And I like the subversion.
Okay.
Because Maguire meant to do it on purpose. He talks about it, and so therefore I like it.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess this part was just bothering me because I was like, and maybe it's just I'm too attached to the musical, but I was just sitting there and I'm like, the emotional core of this story, the most interesting, like, emotional piece of it is her leaving her friends because she has to go do this terrorist work. Mm-hmm. And we talk about it in like 2 paragraphs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we don't really know what this terrorist work is either. The whole time,
they never elaborate.
Like, she doesn't really tell Fiyero, which makes sense, but also we don't find out. And but we do know is that she's not the like head of the terrorist organization because she's green, so it'd be easy to find her out.
Yep.
But she is a pawn, and she knows she is a pawn, and she doesn't even know who is in charge and making these calls, but she's like working in the shadows, acting through this.
And it's like, and this is where I made the note, and I forgot that this book wasn't written in 2005. But in 1993, you said?
It was published in 95, but it took him a few years to write it.
Okay, so it was published in 95. So maybe in 1995, this whole "you're terrorists" or "our freedom fighters" thing was like, you know, new and avant-garde, and now it's been done to death.
Well, also, so I talked about it a little bit, like he wanted to write a book about evil, but another thing that inspired this, after he had decided he was going to talk about evil and set it in a world of children's fantasy, but like not for children, is that he was in London and he saw a poster saying that Bin Laden was the new Hitler, and Hitler was in big letters, and he had a lot of thinking about these, like, how in politics people treat these people that are awful people. Like, he was like, Hitler was evil, right? No disputing that, but he's like, what if, like, then that connected to his thoughts of what makes evil, what makes wicked, and then he had the vision of, instead of Hitler in big letters, it was wicked in big letters. And so, like, he went into this not only with his whole philosophical ideas of what is evil, but like specifically this political climate of the 90s and of the Gulf War and all of that. So this chunk, part 3, is him diving into the Gulf War ideas of terrorism and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So it is. So, but again, your point exactly. Like, now in 2024, we're like, we don't need to read. Like, it's weird reading pre 9/11 terrorist stories that are so close to 9/11, right? Like, it's different when we read terrorism stories during World War II, written during World War II. There's like so much distance there.
Yeah.
Whereas this is written in the 90s, like,
just right around the corner. Like,
exactly.
Is this 2001?
It is interesting to, like, in the context of when he's writing this, the politics going on then and how it affects this, and the distance. It's just weird. It's just a weird, because the distance between when he's writing this and what the big event that really changed for us in our lives. I mean, how old were you?
4.
The age difference. But anyways, like, I don't know. It is interesting, but also it doesn't go in enough detail that it's just boring to me.
Yeah.
Like, but their conversations, Fiyero and Elphaba's conversations, a lot of the, like, political, philosophical, religious conversations within these books between characters, I don't give a shit about. The ones between Fiyero and Elphaba, I like.
And it's interesting because both of them really have a point and are saying, coming from a place where we understand their characters. Because Elphaba, of course, is speaking from this spot of, like, oh, yes, the animals with capital A are being oppressed and we must help free them. And Fiero's like, well, that's all well and good, but I have a country to take care of. Yes. And if I get to... Yeah. They're going to come in and, like, wipe my
Kill
family.
my family and my whole clan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is interesting. Whereas other religious conversations that happen, I did not go to ministry school for a reason. You know what I mean? Yeah, so then after having this conversation and debate, like, Fiyero has this encounter one day where he's, like, at a tavern and he sees this bear cub get murdered in front of his eyes. And it almost feels like that sparks something in him, but then it doesn't.
It does. It almost does, because he almost goes to tell Elphaba, but knows this would spark, because of their relationship, he knows that, like, if he were to tell her that, then she would go, like, I don't want to use the word AWOL, but, like, I guess something similar to that, right? She would, like, not be cautious, like she has barely been, but she would be, like, out in the open trying, like, and she would die in trying. Yeah. To know, and he knows that. So then we get the, like, nitty-gritty of their relationship. Then she also
is alluding to like, oh, around Lurlamus.
Like their version of Christmas, there's gonna be this big huge thing, and I need you to know where you're gonna be, and I need to know that you're gonna stay there. And so he promises he's gonna stay in his like hotel where he's supposed to be staying, not in this like random attic in the alley that he's hanging out with her. And they both are lying to each other, and they both distract each other with sex. And this is very along the lines of like Shakespearean tragedy, which this book, I would argue, is just a Shakespearean tragedy. And I think Maguire, just from the interviews I've listened in earlier today, I think he would love that, and I think that's what he kind of wanted.
I think there's that. I think if you look at it from that lens, I think it does a really good job. And I think it is that there are aspects of this book that are good. It's just the version that we're giving you guys that has kind of like pretty concise plot points is buried under like mountains and mountains of description. And I'm always left with this thought of like, why are we describing this and not talking about like what Elphaba's been doing in the past like 4 years?
What has made her feel so extreme about this politics world that she's like into? I want to know, besides the fact that she, has been like, she has dealt with people seeing her differently because her color of her skin is literally different. Green, like there's like the very basic that, like obviously she's been oppressed because of that, but like I want to know what else she has done and what else she has learned in the last 5 years, because so far we just have not seen her learn anymore. She has just become alone. She has a cat that she hangs out with, and that's it. Like, she's just becoming more and more alone. She's isolating herself. That's all we know. And like Fiyero, obviously he, in this chunk, we don't know much about him. He's just there to like point out at the isolation and for us to know that she still has good in her at this point.
And then also the thing that's interesting with that is, she's more and more alone, but she still has these ties to her old life. And then I guess we'll talk about in the next section, but the next section pops around. It's like next section pops around, and then all of a sudden she's not alone again. She's surrounded by people, and I'm like, we need progression. Can we keep with progression?
Before the end of this part, though, at one point, Fiyero runs into Glinda, who is married to a rich old man, who is the who's who of town, who is talking in the very like bubbly, shallow way that she's supposedly talks a lot, very effervescent. And before Fiyero leaves, she like pulls him to the side and like is described, I like how they describe it, like she's like a deeper tone, and it's like she's like, how is she? I miss her. If you see her, tell her I miss her. And it's like, I love that, because I love that we see Glinda go down this road that she could have had two forks, right? She could have been closer to what Elphaba is, and she could have stayed on the path of being a socialite, high society. She does go down that path, but at this point, we still know that there is still some actual substance to her, that is not just about selfish money, etc.
She's not just all sparkling. So they have that interaction. The
Christmas stuff.
The Christmas stuff, terrorist action is planned, and Elphaba is gonna kill Madame Morrible, I think is what it's implied.
So Fiyero follows her, and we this whole time are thinking that they're trying to kill the wizard, is what they're like. That's what Fiyero thinks too. And he follows her, and then he sees that Elphie's trying to attack Madame Morrible, who happens to be surrounded by schoolgirls, which stops her from doing that.
Oh, I didn't think that was a coincidence.
No, it's not. But like, that's what Fiyero sees.
Oh, yeah.
Because Fiyero also is a bit of a dummy.
Yes, he is.
And then he runs back to their like little hideout to wait for Elphaba, which is what Elphaba specifically asked him not to do.
Yeah, because she's like, they're going to track me down after this, and it's going to be bad. And lo and behold,
it's bad.
And something that I totally missed the first time I read through it. Fiyero gets kidnapped by the Gale Force, which is like the secret police.
He gets killed.
Oh, he gets killed by them. Sorry,
not
he gets
kidnapped. Brutally killed right there.
He gets brutally killed right then and there. Yes. Sorry, I got confused with later parts of the book where they were like, maybe he got kidnapped and tortured, and maybe like he's.
Anyways.
But I totally missed that the first time. So I thought that Elphaba was just having a breakdown about like the fact that she failed to kill Madame Morrible, No. Yeah.
Because the one person that like she felt like seen by and like in her one like that we know of, because again time jumps, like romantic connection, like they were full in love, like this whole thing. He died because of her actions. And so she has this big guilt on her, which becomes a huge thing. And then it kind of like
it jumps 7 years again.
Well, not even that. Before that, at the end of this, it's the same night. We don't know what happens to Elphaba, but she ends up going to essentially like a nun. What's the nun place called? Convent. She shows up to a church essentially, and her wrists are bleeding. So we're like, did she do this? I think she did. I think so.
100%.
Yeah, she's like, and her wrists are bleeding, and the nun takes her in, and there is a Mother Yakel, who Yakel was a long time ago. When the very first part, Yakel gave Elphaba's mom a supposed potion to make her have a son / never have kids. I forget.
/ not have another green daughter.
Yeah. And then so here we see Yakel show up for a second time, and it's like, what? And like, unless you're paying a lot of attention and writing a lot of notes like I am.
Isn't Yakel also at the club?
Yes, we don't, but they don't say Yakel.
Oh, okay.
We don't, but like there is a lady described to be her. Yeah. And then we get to part 4 in the Vinkus, and we have another time jump. It's 7 years later.
It's 7 years later. Elphaba has a kid, maybe? Question mark.
She's the nuns are sending her off onto a caravan to go into the Vinkus, and with the caveat that she takes this kid whose name is
Lear.
Liir, Liir. So she's on a caravan. The caravan stuff, the road trip part, boring. I don't like road trips in books.
Yeah.
With one exception, like really, like road trip movies, love. TV shows, love. Road trips and books are boring. I don't care about journeys.
Because I need you to think real hard about that sentence.
As soon as I said it, I was like, whoop.
Yeah, no, and it's just like they also start talking about all these other things that have happened, like politically, and then we meet this random elephant lady,
a princess who is an elephant but also has a curse on her. Yeah,
and also promises to grant Elphaba magic wishes, and then also like
Elphaba gets a dog.
Oh,
she gets
also
bees.
has a blood sacrifice thing going, so this guy like dies. It was like they like it's after they talk to the because like the cook does something that pisses Elphaba off
and disappears and
everyone's like, oh, and then they meet the elephant lady, and the 3 people that are still on the caravan, one of them's like, I want money, the other one's like, I want to die somewhere peaceful, and then I don't remember what Elphaba said. Because this part was boring.
But her and the princess have a really big conversation about, because the princess gives Elphaba 3 crows as familiars and it's like, you're going to be disguised as a witch, and then tells her that there's a whole conversation about destiny here, which is really important to Elphaba, like that no one controls her destiny. Like no one can control your destiny but you. Like it's essentially the conversation from the princess's point of view, and it's like really affects Elphaba in this moment. But I missed the sacrifice part. But.
I mean, it wasn't that interesting. It was just like the old guy that wanted, as she gives them the magic, she like, they say, oh, sometimes there's like a blood sacrifice and the old guy passes away in the night or something. It's really not important. It's just the only thing I got out of this section. Yeah. Because this is the part where I don't remember if I was reading this last night or this morning. But I definitely was checked out because I was like, all of the stuff that I cared about and all of the characters that we met and are introduced to in the shiz are no longer part of this story. And I'm sorry, call me old-fashioned. I think we should keep characters that we're invested in the whole time.
Unless they die.
Yeah.
For reasonable reasons.
Yeah, I don't think we should keep getting introduced to like 50 new characters every section. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, so Elphaba like moves past this elephant lady and goes to the castle of Kiamoko.
Which is the home of Fiyero and his wife, or widow, I guess.
Saramina.
Has their 3 kids, and their like tradition culture is that they always let passersby stay for as long as they need to. And so they welcome Elphaba in. Their whole goal of going there is to essentially apologize for her role, the reason why Fiyero died. And she's going because she has this huge guilt. She needs to go there. She needs to be forgiven and then go back to the convent. That's like her like plan.
Well, she plans on going like holing herself away in a mountain.
Yeah, and like going, and like exactly. Sarima or whatever her name is like, hey, we're not talking about Fiyero's death. I don't care what the fuck you want to do. If you're staying here, you're welcome here. We'll call you Auntie Guest. That's fine. We don't have to say your name. But like, we're not talking about my husband's death. And like, she has had this weird grief take over her that she has like weird ideas of what happens. She thinks that Fiyero and Galinda were the ones having an affair because he always talked about Galinda and how pretty she was and never really talked about Elphaba, which is funny because obviously that's him trying to hide it. Men.
Men, indeed. And like Elphaba even points that out, is like, why would he talk so much about the woman that he is having an affair with? And she's like, to throw me off track, obviously.
Yeah.
And it's like, honey, your husband wasn't that smart there, darling.
No.
Really not.
Of their 3 kids, the middle kid, the boy, bullies Lear a ton. Also, Lear knows that Fiyero is his dad. Yeah. But at this point, Elphaba has not mentioned any relation to Lear besides that the nuns were like, you gotta take him. Because we find out when she was, the first 2 years she was at the convent, she was essentially like in a coma almost. Or
more like, probably more likely catatonic.
Yeah. And then she spent most of her time in like the hospital part helping a bunch of kids who didn't have any parents, including Lear, and also like helping the sick as they like a hospice situation essentially. And so she never really thought of Lear as a child until we'll get to it later. But at one point, the bully kid, they're playing hide and seek. It's like, hey, there's this fishing well at the bottom of this castle.
Also, Lear's not green.
Yeah, Lear's not green. Yeah. There's this fishing hole in the bottom of the castle. Let's play hide and seek. You can go down there, and they like trap him in this like fishing hole for like days. He's like 6 or 7 here, and this happens just as Nanny comes to Lear and is like, "Hey, I've tracked you down. You're alive. We thought you were dead all these years." And then they find him, and Nanny's like, "What the fuck, you guys? This is a child. He's missing for days. He's almost drowned. He's waterlogged." Like, and they do CPR, and he comes back to life. Like, all is good. But it's just like, Nanny again, the one person
with any kind of goddamn sense when it comes to children. Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And she tells her, oh yeah, Glinda came and enchanted the shoes, and now she doesn't need anyone to help her walk.
Yeah.
Nessa Rose doesn't need anyone to help her walk. It's kind of made her full of herself, and now she's the eminent throp.
Yep. Yeah. And so things are welling up there. Also, while she's at this castle, Elphaba finds a book in Sarima's like library tower that is called the
Grimoire.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Grimoire? It's a grimoire in my head as well, because that's like a normal word. Anyways, it's a book of magic, and Sarima says that one time an old guy came and gave her the book and said, keep this safe. It's from another world. It can't get to the other world or else it'll be disastrous. And Sarima's like, okay, I'll keep this book.
Honestly, I love Sarima. She was so fun and just so like fucking weird.
She's weird for sure.
I was just sitting there being like, ma'am, you got like a whole deal going on. But I really enjoyed her character just in the sense of like, she was always making these like power plays that were so pointless and petty.
Yeah.
Like the whole, I'm not going to let you tell me what happened to my husband.
Yeah.
I'm just going to continue to think that he was cheating on me with this beautiful, pretty woman. And that's why she died.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you're halfway right.
Yeah. Yeah. Then the next part is we're still in part 4, but the uprisings part, we find out that Nessa Rose is the Eminence and that she's like starting to take over Munchkinland. Elphaba is looking through the grimoire and sees a picture of a creepy lady that's labeled Yackle Snarling. Mm-hmm. So now we have a third actual mention of the word yackle.
I gotta be so for real. I was so checked out at this point.
I read this all last night. The youngest of Fiero's kids, Nor, who's a girl, goes out and spies on what is the Gale Force Guard, which is the Wizard's Guard, who's coming into this land, this land is like very not touched by the wizard because it's like a harsh, mountainous, drastic kind of world.
And it's not like other places in Oz.
There's not good resources.
There's not good resources. There's not just like one person to topple over and then he can annex it. It's complicated.
Yeah. And so she sees the Gale Force. She goes and says hi to them. And as customary, they invite them in when Elphaba's like, don't let the Gale Force in here, you guys. This is dangerous. And then Samir's like, guess what? I'm going to do it.
I am the person in charge.
Yep.
I will not let you tell me what to do. Mm-hmm. That's big older sister energy.
Sure. Anyways, at this point, so like all the guards staying with them, Nanny then tells Elphaba that her mom, about her mom going to Yackle. And so Elphaba's starting to make these connections with Yackle at all these places. Mm-hmm. She also tells them that Turtle Love and... Sorry, not Turtle Love. I wrote Turtle Heart because... Yeah.
I did that earlier.
Turtle Heart and... obviously Turtle Heart and Elphaba's mom...
Milena.
Milena. Elphaba's mom had, like, love. But it's for sure confirmed here that Nessa Rose's dad is Turtle Heart.
Yeah.
And then here Elphaba's like, well, I thought this whole time... that like, because her dad used to be like, Elphaba's a curse to me. And so Elphaba's always assumed that's because her dad is not Frex. But now she's finding out that the favorite child, Nessa Rose's dad, is not Frex. And they know that. And it's like, well, fuck, what does that mean? Like this whole, like, it's a big thing for Elphaba.
Well, and then after that realization, she does have the little line of like, I was always a reminder of his faults and Nessa Rose wasn't.
Yeah. And then Nor goes and discovers the broom can fly. And so Elphaba flies to Munchkinland to go check out,
because her dad sends her a letter and it's like, hey,
come help out your sister because things are happening and I'm worried.
And Munchkinland's declared itself not part of Oz anymore.
It's succeeding.
Yeah. And I think she's biting off more than she can chew.
Yeah. And so they go, Elphaba reunites with Nessa Rose. Nessa Rose is also being casually called the Wicked Witch of the East by the Munchkinlanders because she's like ruling under a very like harsh,
theocratic.
Yeah.
And also like she has this interaction with her dad and her dad is like, yes, you're going to be here and look after Nessa Rose because she's my favorite. Mm-hmm. Not in those words, of course, but essentially. But essentially. And then she's like, she's not really your... Elphaba's like, Nessa's not really your daughter. And she's like, I know he was Turtle Hearts, but that's almost made it more.
Yeah, because we find out that Frex also was in love with Turtle Heart. And so they had a weird throuple going on. And like, we love co-parenting as long as it's consensual in that weird way. Love it. But unfortunately, Turtle Heart died. And that made him go a little bonkers in his head.
Well, at least going bonkers in the head after somebody you love dies is a family trait.
Yeah, truly. While Elphaba is there, she witnesses Nessa Rose dealing with some constituents, and this lady who's like, hey, my maid wants to go marry this axeman. Can you curse his axe so his axe will kill him? And she's like, no, but I'll make the axe slip with a curse. And this story comes directly from The Wizard of Oz. It is have you read The Wonderful Wizard of Oz?
No.
This is literally in this children's book that the Tin Man was cursed. They say by the Wicked Witch in there, but like the Wicked Witch is at the scene. So I liked that because like it's plausible to see how this story was retold that the Wicked Witch did it. Yes. The West did it specifically. But in the story, it happens that the Tin Man's like, yeah, I wanted to marry this Munchkinlander, but she was a maid and her boss said no. And I got cursed and chopped off my whole body. And then a Tin Man put me together. And so we're seeing this story from Oz in here, which I liked. That was fun. It does not happen far enough.
Yeah, it's kind of this weird half and half thing. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, we'll have to talk about when we talk about the musical.
Yeah. Elphaba also is horrified at how the Munchkinlanders are mistreating the capital A animals because they used to be really good to the capital A animals due to like them being a farming land. And so she's getting her anger about capital A animals mistreatment is getting lit again here.
And then also, she even tries to free a couple of them, and then they're like, where are we going to go?
Yeah, they're going to bring us right back here.
They're going to bring us right back here, and I'm going to end up under a rope. More likely, I'm going to be served to you for dinner.
Yeah.
And by golly,
yeah,
they are.
Yeah. She flies back to the Vinkus, and when she gets there, it's only Nanny and her various animals. Also, at one point during the caravan, she rescues a monkey.
Oh, we forgot to mention the fact that she like low-key kills the second son that was bullying her son.
Yes, she was thinking about how icicles are hot anger and cold anger, and they would make great weapons. And just as she thought that, the icicle falls and pierces his head.
Because all of a sudden she's got magic.
Yeah.
And that's fine, but it's also like, we had like 250 pages before this.
Yes.
You couldn't have done any kind of foreshadowing along the way.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Anyways, she gets back to the castle. It's just Nanny and the various animals there. And apparently the gale force took everyone out.
As soon as Elphaba was gone.
As soon as Elphaba was gone. And Lear has conveniently disappeared.
Lear went along with them.
Yeah. And then we have...
dumb little boy.
Yes. And then we have another 7-year time jump.
And this is the one that really about did me in, because I'm like, this is so frustrating because first of all, in the time jump when it ends, Lear's back. There's no explanation. Well, there's an explanation.
Yeah, they let him go because they liked him.
Yeah. So he's back.
I mean, I think him being like such a he's dumb because he's never been taught. Right? And he's not like, you know what I mean? And then he's also like very like...
I have no problem with the fact that they let him go or that he went with them because he's like 7. Of course
he's 7 and he's kind. Cool. And I think the part that he's like so ignorantly kind is very purposeful because of this question. Like, as we get into it, is Elphaba evil? And if her child is so ignorantly innocent and good, then I think... I think he's doing that on purpose.
Yeah. Well, it's also, but I have no issue with that, right?
Yeah.
I have no issue with that. My issue is it ends on this cliffhanger, this like almost cliffhanger-esque thing of, oh my God, her son is gone. Everyone else is gone. They've been taken and she left. And like, once again, people are getting hurt because of her actions. They took the opportunity to like take advantage of her disappearance because she had to go check on her sister.
Yeah.
And all this other stuff and yada, yada, yada. And then she's just taken over the castle and her son's fine.
Yeah.
It's like, then what was the point of having him be gone in the first place besides what you've already said?
Yeah. I don't know.
It's like, and then it's like so frustrating because then they talk about how, oh my God, a tornado drops in and they've never seen a tornado before. And it like drops a house on Nessa Rose.
During a ceremony.
During a ceremony celebrating perfect attendance.
Yep.
And then the children manage to survive. So they all get to have perfect attendance for her funeral too. And that was like, that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But it's like, again, these time jumps are so frustrating because Elphaba in this time jump seems so different to me.
I don't think it's so different. I think it's so different from like part 1 and part 2 and part 3, but I think it checks out. It's like she's like from part 4 to 5, I think is okay. But like within the context of everything else, no. But if it was just 4 and 5, I see it because like she's getting this world-shattering information about her parents. Her sister is becoming a tyrant. And then her one goal that she had was to apologize to this lady. And she created a mini kind of home here for the first time. And the one time she creates a home, it's gone. And then we have her here still in that same spot because she's stuck, right? She's stuck. She's now trying to use apparently Dr. Dilmon's research and create flying monkeys. She's been able to have more monkeys suddenly, even though she only had one. How did that happen? I don't know. They don't say it. But she's literally sewing wings into these monkeys, like creating them to fly. Like it's just her and the nanny and Lear who's back. And she's turning into like essentially a mad scientist. and she's just stuck. She's stuck from her research plans with Dr. Dillamond, nowhere. Her love life, nowhere. Her weird little family, her one goal she had in life literally was to apologize and to like pay for her mistakes. Impossible to do because she can't find these people. So I think from 4 to 5, it makes sense. For the novel as a whole, it does not.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. The more you're talking, the less I'm disliking this book.
I mean,
but the problem is, again, it's buried under all of this.
It's buried. It's absolutely buried.
And it's under all this dense stuff. And I'm not saying that I'm a baby who needs to be spoon-fed information. I am saying that when you spend like 20 pages describing how the hills of this place look like breasts, I'm not always paying attention to every single word you're telling me.
I will say what helped me read this book is after each part, I went on Schmoop. Again, we've shouted out Schmoop and our love for Schmoop, but like, oh God, I love Schmoop. And went through their summarization and then connected with what I remembered to what they said. I was like, oh, this is what's happening. This makes more sense.
Okay.
So I would recommend that if you're reading this, unless you're really into philosophy.
Philosophy is high on your list of no-nos, right? Right next to metacognition.
I just like philosophy for philosophy's sake, which is this, and which is like a third of what I had to read for English, my English degree.
Well, okay, so like going back into this time jump. So Nessa Rose is dead, and it also is just kind of this is frustrating for me personally because like Elphaba and her sister were arguing like 20 pages ago, and instead of having to deal with any kind of ramifications of, I haven't talked to my sister since we had that argument, it's just like, I want her shoes. And I'm like, I mean, I understand why you want her shoes.
I think she's like full of grief here, not just because of the shoes, though. I read her with so much more grief than that.
Yes, but I guess what I'm trying to say is the whiplash. Again, we're going from I'm angry at you and we're angry to, oh, she's dead and we're never going to see them interact again.
Yeah.
And it's another problem with these time jumps. You're right. She's full of grief and that's what's driving her actions.
Yeah.
And also rage. But
yeah, I think you're right. In the whiplash, I think, though, for me was more because we don't see much interaction, but that's because of the earlier issue with like every part we have a new cast of characters. And I think that's, like, there needs to be more continuation of characters throughout the part. Absolutely. I think that would make this stronger. But I do think that Elphaba, because she flies back to the funeral, I think, especially through her interaction with Glinda, who is almost like a sister, not the same, obviously, as Nessa Rose, who's her little sister, because Elphaba raised Nessa Rose, right? She was her caretaker.
Parentified to hell and back.
And so, like, but Glinda knows that and knows all of like her dirty secrets. And so when Glinda kind of like throws shade at Elphaba's grief, like, whatever, you're sad about it. It is sad, whatever. That like I can, like, I feel like that's the big pain here, right? It's like the only other person that's left on this world, because her dad does not understand Elphaba, right? And so the only other person that could understand anything Elphaba has been through is Glinda. And Glinda's like,
absolutely.
Whatever.
I'm refusing to do so because that will require some introspection, and she has shut out all of the introspection in her life.
Exactly. So I thought it's good. Again, like the rest of this book, buried under so much bullshit.
Glinda then makes this remark about how, like, Elphaba tells her the story of, oh yeah, Fiero's wife thought that you were having an affair, and she's like, oh well, he was so dark skinned, and I'm like, yeah. There's racism in this book. Yeah. Oh, and then Glinda has this line too that also kicks off the world. That kicks off some shit. Because she's like, oh yeah, I gave the shoes to the little girl.
To get out of Munchkin Land, because she knows that now that Nessa Rose is dead, the wizard's going to take control of Munchkin Land again. And so Glinda's like trying to pitch it. I'm doing it so that the shoes get out of Munchkin Land and away from the wizard. And Elphaba's like, she's going to the wizard with the shoes.
Well, and she frames it more like, oh, well, there's not going to be like a civil war over the shoes because they've become this big, powerful thing. So like if they're not in Munchkin Land,
it's going to be okay.
It's going to be fine because then we won't have like 16 different ministers fighting over the shoes. And then like Elphaba's like, they're going straight to the wizard who sucks.
Yeah. And also And also Nessa Rose did say that she was going to write Elphaba in her will to inherit the shoes. Mm-hmm. So like she does have a literal claim on the shoes.
Yeah, she has a literal claim on the shoes, and then Glinda drops the hard ass line, "The shoes won't make your father love you anymore."
Mm-hmm. And that spins off again because it's from coming from Glinda. If it was any other character, would not have affected Elphaba.
But again, this is my issue though. We have not seen Glinda interact with Elphaba since they departed and kissed. And yes, we've seen, like, inferentially how Fiyero and Glinda and Elphaba interacted with each other, like, triangularly.
Yeah.
But it's not in a manner that makes a ton of, like... But it's not enough for me to really feel the full impact of this sisterly relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh. Again, because of all the extra.
Yeah, because of all the extra, and just because it's like, you know, I haven't seen Glinda in 200 pages.
But essentially, Elphaba is trying to go find Dorothy, not to, like, attack Dorothy, but to get the shoes. She wants, like, she feels bad for Dorothy being stuck here. Like, you see her have this empathy for Dorothy. She runs into Bach. Bach's like, Dorothy was great. And she's like, okay, I'm gonna go get the shoes. And then she goes to the Emerald City and is like, what if I killed Madame Horrible? Because I'm feeling all this grief and this guilt for multiple reasons.
And then she's spiraling about, like, have I made any decisions on my own? Have we made any decisions on our own?
Yeah.
It's that whole, like, is destiny controlling us, or is we making our own destiny? Because, you know, I ended up in the West, and Glinda is in the North, and we're all sorceresses.
And we're all powerful, and we're all moving pieces in this, like, political landscape.
Have I ever made a decision of my own design?
So she goes to kill Madame Horrible, who, when she arrives, is already dead.
Pretty much.
She's dead.
She's, like, in hospice, basically.
Yeah. And so she smashes for all your work you've done type of award into her head.
Yep.
And then leaves. And then she goes to Avarik, who was, like, the rich asshole friend they had, who's still a rich asshole, and they have a big dinner party, and she tells everyone there, I killed her. And then they have a big conversation of what is evil and what is a soul.
I was so mad at this point, and I full on skipped it because I was like, okay, so we had 2 paragraphs about Fiera's death, and we're arguing with this asshole for 2 pages about the nature of evil. And I know it's, like, thematic of the whole story and yada yada yada, but it's like,
and
why?
It's to show that the rich people in Oz don't care. It's just a show. It's like the classist. These rich people who could affect change throughout Oz don't care because they are in Emerald City and they are making money and they are just going to talk. It's like, you know, it's like the wizards in their high tower kind of situation.
Yeah, but, like,
I think it's dumb.
It also doesn't need to go on for 2 pages.
Then she is drunk and she goes off into the streets and she runs into the time clock as well as the dwarf. And she's like, hey, what the fuck, dude? Like I know who, like, what, this is crazy. And he's like, hey, I'm an immortal dwarf from another world, and I'm here to protect that magical book you got. Also, look, there's 3 acts of this play within this clock. The first act is not kind of pointless. The second act is called The Birth of Evil, and it is all about how your mom was assaulted and your biological father is the wizard and he's from another world. Oh yeah, she meets the wizard after the funeral. We kind of skipped over that part.
I mean,
and
she's
just have an argument.
And they just have an argument, and then it's revealed that, like, Sarah Mina's family is dead, and
except for Nor,
who's a political prisoner who's gets tortured, probably.
Yeah, she's like in chains and, like, hunched over. It's
also,
awful.
they killed the oldest son by a paraffin necklace, which
as a public display to essentially destroy any energy, any power the clans had in the Vinkus.
Yeah.
No, it's awful. It's gross and gruesome. Yeah. And the wizard essentially is like, hey, I'm from another world, and I don't give a shit about Oz because guess what? I'm from another world.
I honestly, I do like the wizard in the sense of he is just this amoral bastard, and I totally understand where he's coming from because in his head, none of these people are real.
It's just a weird dream.
It's just a weird dream. It's just these weird things. Nothing is real. He's the only thing that actually exists. So of course he thinks that he can come in and treat everyone like this. And it's wild.
Yeah. And so Elphaba is losing her mind at this point because of all these things happening. She goes back to her castle in the Vinkus.
I really didn't like this part.
No, but me neither. It's boring. And also, again, boring. She's taking all these like drugs that she can find. She has this like weird vision of seeing the wizard's backstory, where in what's essentially our world, he's failing to find work because of racism, because she sees a sign that says no Irish to apply, essentially. And so he's failing at his jobs, and she sees him walking into the ocean to commit suicide. And that is how he ended up coming to Oz, is through the ocean. And there's, with all of their like mythology in here of the Lululin, all the saints have this thing where they walk into a waterfall and they don't walk out. And this shows up a lot of times throughout this book. It's mentioned, this myth of or like creation story, I guess, of this. So like it's so convoluted and so like just
the symbolism ain't symbolism.
It's not clear unless you are paying so much attention to. Like, you need a study guide to read this book, and it's written to pick apart as if it is a huge like ancient story, but it was written in 1995, and that is my biggest issue with this book. Anyways, all of this is happening. She's losing her mind, and then Lear comes home and is like, guess what? Dorothy and her friends are coming here because the wizard granted a wish. If I had a wish, I would want a father. And what Elphaba says, she was going to say, if I had a wish, I would wish for a soldier, as in, like, what she was going to say, but then she stops at the word soul.
Yeah.
Because, again, this is a whole thing, because she's, like, unsure if she has a soul, and she's also, like, outwardly an atheist because of her dad issues. Mm-hmm. And, like, so, again, but it's, like, this book, again, one of my bigger gripes of this is that it talks about the different themes he's trying to, like, analyze here. There's, like, 5 of them, and they go really in depth in each one, but he should have just chosen 2.
Yeah.
It would have been way stronger if he just chose 2.
Especially because, like, humans are creatures of meaning. We make stuff up out of nothing. If you put 2 themes into a book, somebody's going to sit there and find 8.
Yeah.
But if you put 5, I'm going to glaze over and not understand any of it.
Exactly. Yeah, he needed to practice a little more restraint in that, but... Anyways.
So then there's this, like, it's also revealed that at this point, Dorothy's being sent to kill her specifically. And so, like, Elphaba gets ready to go on the defense. And then she also has this.
She's not quite on the defense, though. She's wary, but she also is like, I don't want to kill this child because I don't want to kill a child. So I'm going to, like, I want to talk her to give her into giving my shoes off is, like, what she's going into it.
I mean, yeah, she doesn't want to kill the child.
Yeah,
but she is like, she is wary and she is like being paranoid, but she's also like slipping at this point more and more every moment.
Yeah,
like she has this thing where she thinks that Fiyero is the scarecrow, and like
she's like, what if he was captured and he was the scarecrow? And which I'm like, oh lols, I wonder where the musical got that idea from. Right, that's like the one thing I know about the musical. So, yeah. So then, like, Elphaba's just also kind of having this realization of all of these people that she's grown up with have settled into either complacency. Yeah, like Bacchus is chilling as a farm
guy.
Yeah,
doesn't have any animals.
Glinda is, and all the other richer kids are getting richer and richer
in the moment. Her dad is
just
about to die out of grief.
Yeah.
And she's like, what was the point of everything that we've done?
And everyone else she knew is dead because of her.
Yeah. And there is this brief moment of sanity that she does have, is where she's like, if I just sat down and explained this if I was just explained this whole situation to this girl, she would give me the shoes.
And that's what she's trying to do, right?
No.
Yes, because she has their dog whose name is Killjoy. Like, she sends Killjoy and the other dogs they have to go and greet them. But this is a direct, like, reference to the actual book, is that in the book, the Wizard of Oz book, the Wicked Witch sends 40 wolves and the Tin Man kills 40 wolves. But here, she's sending the dogs to go greet them. But they kill all the dogs. And then she's like, okay, I'm going to send the birds to go greet them. Because they're like, she can see them, but there's not a clear path up. So it's to help them guide up. And so she sends the birds to kind of help. They kill all the birds, like they do in the Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Then she sends the bees Which is why these animals that she got in the caravan are really important, because it's a direct thing from the Wonderful Wizard of Oz. The bees all died. Like, she's trying to send them to guide them up. And eventually she's like, okay, this is not working. I'm going to send the monkeys because I need to talk to Dorothy, and I need to talk to the Cowardly Lion, or she doesn't the lion, because she knows that the lion is the cub from the class. And she's like, I need to talk to both of them, and that's when she has that line, which is like, if I sat down with them, it all makes sense.
Well, and then this is the part where after all the animals have died, and this is the thing that we're talking about, where she's like, she was taking the wrong approach. Clearly, she should welcome the child, explain the situation, and there might be vengeance against the wizard if we can get the elephant lady.
Yeah, she's like, okay, like, she's like, hope is not lost. I can get these two people on my side because I have a connection to them. Like I know this is a child. Like, she explicitly says she sees herself in Dorothy throughout this. She's like, Dorothy's been thrust into this world, and the world's trying to take advantage of her, and she's lost and she's scared, and I see that myself in her. I'm gonna help her. I know this lion cub from back in the day. We can help each other, and then once they get there, all hell breaks loose, and this is like, and that's like. And it's a lot, right? Like, they also, Lear immediately is like, I'll protect you, witch, but also I'm not going to protect you over protecting Dorothy. I'm going to save her before you. Sorry. Which I'm like, also fair.
Yeah. Yeah. He's like 17 at this point. He's like, mom, not mom.
Yeah. Well, she is his mom, but it's like, she's not motherly to him.
Yeah. Like, yeah. So it's like a whole other thing too.
Yeah. But they come in, and she's trying to explain things, but the lion and Toto are like freaking out, and Dorothy is like scared, but like not. And she's like, Dorothy is like, I'm so sorry my house killed her sister. I feel so bad, like mimicking the amount of grief and guilt that Elphaba feels. But that communication is happening while the lion and Toto are freaking out, and so the witch is like, hey, I need to get you alone and away so we can talk this out, and I can get the shoes and we can figure stuff out.
And then Dorothy's like, I can't take the shoes off.
Yeah.
Everyone's been asking me for these damn shoes, and I've been trying to take them off, and they can't come off.
Which Elphaba doesn't understand. Like, she doesn't comprehend that. She thinks that she is just refusing to. And so she's getting more dire and more dire. She sets her broom on fire to kind of like scare Dorothy into giving her the shoes.
And that's when she's like, Elphaba's paranoia really starts tumbling off, because she's also like, are you the adept? Have Madame Morrible enchanted you too? And like
it gets like really intense. And then Dorothy, who again is like a 10-year-old kid, is like, the fire starts to light Elphaba on fire, and she's like, you need to be put out. So she gets a bucket, which earlier I thought it was really nice little touch. Lear almost trips into the bucket earlier when they come in, and I was like, that's nice. There's a bucket of water. Like, it's what's that thing?
Chekhov's gun.
Yeah, Chekhov's gun. Yeah, I was like, hey, look at that. Chekhov's bucket of water. And Dorothy pours the water on her, and Elphaba is in pain and dies.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then, like, there's a little epilogue of, like, the wizard, of the nanny of Dorothy finding the bottle and taking it to the wizard, and the wizard's like, oh my god, Elphaba was my daughter, and then he disappears in a hot air balloon.
Supposedly is what the people say, but like, he just disappears. Yeah, he's either dead or back in the other world. Yeah, and that's like kind of the end of it.
Yeah. Then they do kind of have this really nice parallel, because they're early on in the Vilcanus section, Sarah Mina's talking to her children and giving them this fairy tale about the witch and the foxes, and how the story ends with the witch went into the fire and never will she come back again? Never again. Yeah. In this time, not since then. Yeah. And that's how the story ends. Yeah. And it's this book. It's it's complicated.
It's so complicated because like there's some parts I love, but there's so much that I'm just like, that's too convoluted. It's too dense.
It's too convoluted. It's too dense. All of this, listening to you talk about this book is significantly more interesting than reading the book. So if you have a friend that's like, I think I should read the Wicked book before I go see the movie, link. Send them the podcast.
Save them.
Because literally, I have gone from being like, this is not the worst book I've read for the podcast, to being like, actually, there are some things in here that are good, and it's just because I listened to Janessa talk about it.
Right.
And that doesn't happen that often.
Oh my god. in my own house. I think this book, if I had a semester class at a university reading and dissecting this book and The Wizard of Oz, the OG, and the movie, I think that would be a kick-ass class and I would be obsessed with it. But because I read it, honestly, within like 4 days, which is a lot, this book needs to be taken slowly and digested and thought about, and it is too dense.
Yeah, and
you know what I mean?
And I feel like it's too dense, and it needs to be digested, and you can't be digesting it alone either.
Yeah.
And because if you're sitting there alone, you're kind of, I mean, I'm walking away from this, and I'm sure he's a very nice man. But
through his interviews, I really like him. Like, he's funny. Like, he's a cool dude. I was also
like, this is just the pretentious guy who needs to tell me how smart he is with all of the fancy words
I think that's how it was when he was, that's also there. You know, you can be both. People are nuanced, as this book says. I think this book, for me, I was trying to debate what I wanted to rate it yesterday when I went to go meet Mark finished on Storygraph. And I was like, and like, because I'm also not great at rating books because I do it based on how I enjoy it, not necessarily content necessarily. But I think this is a solid like 3 stars. I was gonna say give it 2 because I was like, it was so hard to get through. But I think there's this, the good stuff in this is really good. It's just that the ratio is so off for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it's like a 2.5 stars.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was kind of leaning towards, but I think I might bump it to 3.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why it would be a 3-star for you, because you do like analyzing.
Yeah,
and I like analyzing sometimes.
Sometimes, yes, sometimes.
I do like analyzing, but I don't like analyzing when I feel like I'm being force fed it, like inch by inch, and it's not about stuff that I really care about. Because I think that's the core problem for me with this book is I care about the stuff that happens at Shiz. And honestly, 80% of that might be because of my familiarity with the musical.
I think that's a big part of it, is that because I don't have a huge like emotional tie to Wicked the musical, or / I've ever seen it / listened to the whole soundtrack.
But what I'm kind of saying is, like, I don't like except for Elphaba and Saramina. I like her a lot,
and the nanny. I like the nanny.
I think she's good, but I don't love a lot of the characters in this because they don't have a ton of presence, and like I feel like what I was trying to get at with the musical part of it is, because I know the musical, the characters at Shiz, I do have a presence because I'm thinking about them in the musical and I'm connecting those traits. Yeah. And I feel like that's why other parts of this book, I was like, I really don't care about the 6 sisters. No. I care about her and Fiyero, but I also kind of don't.
I knew he was going to die. Yeah. I don't know. This book is so complicated and like not in the good way.
It just feels like they there's a lot of navel gazing and not a lot of time just talking about stuff that's actually happening. Yeah. It's just a lot of contemplating and thinking about and debating the morals and ethics, and I kind of am like, I really just want to see you deal with the politics.
Yeah. Cuz there's a lot of interesting things in this that he doesn't go into. Yeah. Or this book has 5 books worth of information on this. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I kind of wish he split this book into 2 books to really focus on those things. Not really, but you know what I mean? I think he needs to just pare down. He just needs to pare down. Mm-hmm. But I don't think, based off, because I've read another one of his books, that's not his forte. He either is great at short stories, or he writes huge ass books like this, right? He's not good at the middle ground.
Do you know he wrote a ugly stepsister point of view one? I actually low key want to read that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that one's I think he wrote that before Wicked. Yeah, and I think that's what that and Mirror Mirror are the ones that got him pretty. He also wrote a short story, or I don't know if it's a short story. He wrote Matched. I think it's what's called. It's a retelling of
the Matchstick Girl.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a complicated book, right? Mm-hmm. To say the least, it's there are things that are really good, but it's buried under a lot of just leaves.
Yeah. Do you want to know some fun facts?
Sure.
I said most of them already, but this one you might know. So he named Elphaba after Frank L. Baum, as in like phonetically saying F.L. Baum. Elphaba, yeah. So that's how he came up with that name. He specifically, there's really good questions in there, actually.
There's a reader's group guide.
Yeah. But he specifically wrote parts of Elphaba's character to mimic Emily Dickinson, Lena Horne, Virginia Woolf, and Laura Nyro. Because I think the way he wrote women, this book is mostly female characters, which is refreshing, but also that does mimic the Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Because a little fun fact, the Wonderful Wizard of Oz, Frank L. Baum's mother-in-law was like super like, 1900s version, but feminist, and like was like worked with Susan B. Anthony and
Elizabeth Cady Stanton.
Yeah. And so he like Frank L. Baum was like a declared feminist in 1900, which is pretty cool. And so I thought that's interesting that this book, like I think Maguire writes women really well and complex, and I really enjoyed that part of it. I didn't love a lot of the female characters, but I loved that they were all different. Like there wasn't a copy paste of characters, I felt.
No, and they were all like, at first it was kind of interesting, like some of them have parallels with each other. Like Sarah Mina and Glinda kind of parallel each other.
Yeah.
Like the kind of like, I want to be in control of the situation,
yeah,
and I'm going to put on a happy face for it. But also, do not cross this line.
Yeah, but they had similarities or parallels, but they also were still so different. But they're not
the same person.
Which is not often what happens in these kind of books, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I didn't take note of it at the time because I was too busy being like, we're talking about boobs. But yeah, no, the female characters are pretty good in this.
Yeah. A little fun fact about Gregory Maguire, him and his husband were one of the first legal same-sex marriages in Massachusetts, which is pretty cool. And all the other fun facts I had said.
That is kind of circling back to another thing that I was like thinking as you were saying this in 1993. Like it's like, oh man,
1995.
94. What if? Fuck, man, I don't know. Time.
93 was when I was born.
90.
But yeah, for 95, there is a lot of like
there's a lot of queer stuff.
Characters in here. There's a lot of gender stuff that we didn't really get into. There's a lot of gender stuff in here, which I think is interesting. And if you wanted to look at this book through expression of gender lenses, I think it'd be really interesting.
Again, somebody just needs to make like a full course.
I 100% know there is. Are you kidding? We'll talk about the musical boom of Wicked next week, but like with that, how big that musical ended up being, there absolutely was many college courses after. I guarantee there was, But yeah, overall, this book, I'm not like mad I read it. It was hard to read and boring in parts. And his writing is sometimes some of the lines I highlighted in here, which I'll have fun little things on my Instagram. Check out the Instagram at Read the Book First Podcast. But some of the lines are just like so beautiful and so like profound, but it's just buried, and his other writing is so tedious. Like it just bounces back and forth. His like tone. I'm like,
yeah, I think when it comes right down to it, I find this book very frustrating because exactly like you just said, there are great and beautiful lines. Like towards the end, there was one about how like the undoing of like every family is hatred and like just all of the family grudges. Like it is basically just Elphaba reflecting that if she and Nessa had like teamed up and ganged up on the wizard, maybe something could have happened, but they were too busy being pissed at each other because they're sisters.
Okay.
Well, I mean, your sister, you love, you hate, you love, you hate, and it's complicated.
I don't have one, so
I know. Yeah, so it's just this really frustrating, like, you have these really beautiful lines, and then you go back and you're like, the hussy of a baboon, and also this guy's having sex with a tiger?
Yeah, forcefully.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, it's,
Yeah.
But that's also, like, how his writing is, which is, it's unique.
Okay.
Unique does not mean good
Mm-hmm.
or bad. Just means unique.
Yeah.
But yeah. I'm so excited for the musical.
Oh my god, I'm
the way
excited
that
for you.
the promo of the movie musical is keeping me sane through this last week and a half. It's what's keeping me together.
I'm so excited because I might also look up a slime tutorial and watch it with my friends.
Did you know this movie is only part 1?
Yes.
I did not know that till 2 days ago. Devastating.
Sucks to be you.
Rude.
No,
Anyways.
we've been aware. We, being the musical fandom, have been on the edge of our seats, being so excited about this. But also, do you want to know another fun fact? This first part of the movie is going to be about as long as the Broadway show is.
Mm-hmm. The whole show?
Mm-hmm.
But it's only going to like where intermission usually would be, huh?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because they're apparently bringing in some stuff from the books, which I'm very excited about.
Yes.
Because they can bring out the good stuff.
Yeah. I'm excited. I'm excited. Yeah. Okay. Any last thoughts, Amanda?
Are people born wicked? Or do they have wickedness thrust upon them?
It's not the Spider-Man quote, but different.
No.
Is that from the musical?
Yeah.
Anyways, thank you for listening to this episode. Again, listen to this podcast. I don't read the book.
I can't, it's always really fun when we get to like double down on a statement of like, hey, I know the title of our podcast is
Let's
read the book first. Don't. That's how we should say it from now on whenever we don't want to read it.
No! Because branding. Me and the social media team have worked really hard, and the social media team is me, myself, and I. We worked really hard.
Hey, you're doing better than me.
I just realized the animals mentioned in this, they mentioned a tiger, and they mentioned a bear, and obviously a lion.
Yep.
Lions and tigers and bears.
Yep.
Oh my.
Yep. Though they also mention a goat and a pig and a cow.
Sometimes when you make a point, you don't ignore the other information to make the point good.
I mean, those are animals that Dorothy would have found on her farm.
Anyways, thank you for listening to this podcast. Follow us on Instagram at Read the Book First Podcast. I've been posting a lot of fun stuff and would like you to look at it. And now I'm singing about it. Share the podcast with your friends. Push the follow, subscribe button on your podcast player so you don't have to remember that it comes out. And you're like, oh, yay, it's there for me. Listen to it. Woo. We have the Wicked movie episode next week. And then Isaac and I are reading and watching Redwall. And that'll be the end for season 3, part 1. But we'll be back in, I think, February is my plan. Yes. And remember, read the book first.
Except when you shouldn't.